Hello and welcome to another Forex video. This is going to be a week review of the trades that happened that I took or didn't take last week. This has been a bit of a patchy process. At the moment, I am currently focusing on my trading itself because, as you know, it's been a bit holy recently, and I'm trying to sort out my priorities in terms of what I'm doing, what I'm focusing on, and what the last stretch of the quarter is going to be, as it is now currently the 1st of October, going into the last quarter. And I have found for me personally that the summer quarter was a very slow one. I was very unproductive. I was unproductive and not all at the same time. A lot of work I completed, but a lot of my routines went out of whack. I didn't do both. I had to do one or the other, and I sacrificed a lot of my routine to do work. So taking into that account, that's how I need to bear that in mind to plan for next year. And that's something that I really highly recommend you guys do, is start paying attention to what's happening in different seasons and different periods, and note that whether that's something that just happened because, or whether it's something that could happen again potentially. So I know for me, when it's summer, this usually has an effect because it's much darker inside than it is outside, and I want to be outside because it just feels dark and dingy. And then there's things going on. It's summer, you want to be outside having fun, enjoying yourself, and then I'm not. So I kind of get, I guess FOMO of myself, even if I don't know what's going on. I feel like there's going to be something. So that's something to bear in mind next year. I also didn't have a proper break this year. I didn't have proper time off. I just had a few days here and there, or had an off week and decided to call that an off week. But I didn't have a proper break. That's definitely something I'm going to change for next year. It's important to have a break, but I really just wanted to use this year to, I guess, catch up and get myself into a stronger footing, because I really feel like I'm just generally behind in things. So, which doesn't help. And it's a case of, if you don't have a break, if you don't give yourself that time, then you'll pay for it on later on down the line anyway. But without further ado, let's jump into the charts and have a look at what happened last week. So this is the Aussie US dollar, and there are two main trading strategies that I am looking at. One is for a continuation pattern, and one is the turtle soup. Please forgive me, I'm also getting over a cold, so if I sound a bit nasally, I am still a little bit suffering, but we're getting over it, so it's fine. But yes, we've got a continuation trading or turtle soup trading. And turtle soup is where we take the Asian range, so the Asian session between 1 a.m. my time and 8 a.m. We have the lines there. If there's a range, we draw the lines, and we're waiting for price to break above into an area of liquidity and then reject. So if we take a look at this range here, this isn't the Asian range, but it's a range. So we have an area of liquidity. Let's move that over there. I need that to go over there. No, don't do that. Take this off. Okay, you can go over there. Okay. So we have a range, area of liquidity here and here. As you can see, it's kind of like here, I guess, because we wicked into it and then rejected. So price moves up into one of these areas where people have their stop losses to sell. So they probably sold around here, stop loss here, moves down. So we're waiting for price to come back up into this area and see whether we're going to reject, i.e. take out the stop losses and then continue back down, like here, down, up, or vice versa. Or see if price wants to continue through these areas and ignore the fact that they exist, or not ignore them, but see how we react in these areas, basically. So it's currently Monday the 23rd of September, 7 o'clock in the morning, so just before London Open. It's also important to note, so when I'm looking for continuation patterns, I need it to not be in a range. So right now, looking at this, I can obviously see that it's not in a trend at the moment, it's in a range, so we're not looking for any continuation patterns at the moment. But if we go down to the 15-minute, so we have, that's the high of the range there, and the low, so this is the Sydney session, but the Asian low would be here. So we're waiting for price to move down and up, or up and down. But we need evidence as well. It's not just a break and then take a trade to the opposite side. We need to see evidence that it wants to continue into whatever way it's going. So right now we see a bit of momentum. Momentum continues. We see a little wick, which shows, you know, it's tagged into this area and it's not closed in the area. It's you know, spiked in. But there is some momentum here, so I need to be careful, because if we just see a little candle moving up, a little candle here compared to this big move down doesn't fill me with confidence. So I need to see evidence that it doesn't want to move down anymore and that it is likely to continue up. So let's see what we get. We get another large wick, still in this area, continuing down, but a large wick, We could be going into these kind of areas as well, you know, into the Sydney range. But this wick is nice because it's saying that it's trying to push down and failing, closing up here. So on the lower time frames, it's moving all the way down here and then retracing back up. Okay, so we retrace. Another wick down. So you've got lots of wicks down, but we need to see, if we want to take a buy, we need to see evidence that price wants to move up. And at the moment, we're just ranging there. So that's quite a nice candle, because we've got a range, price has tried to move down, we've ranged in this area, and now we're moving up. I didn't take a trade here because I remember the day. I think I was literally just away from the computer for whatever reason. But this setup, I wanted to take this after this range, because again, multiple wicks, same price, can't go down. We didn't see any more shifts down. We haven't seen any evidence that price wants to continue down. But then price moves up back above this line. There is a very slight wick here, but it's very slight, so I don't mind that. So if we look for a trade, we're going to place it at the open. We're going to put it 2 pips below the low, either 2 pips or 12 pips max, and we're aiming for the high here. So just about 2%, so that's one trade. Let's see how we play out. Price moves up, retrace. This is a beautiful shift, right? A beautiful shift of momentum to the upside. The shift doesn't continue, but that's fine, because we are technically still in a ranging market. So we're not looking for a trend, we're just looking for it to go to the other side of the range, right? But that shift up is really nice. It pulling back means that it might not want to continue all the way up. It doesn't have enough momentum to then build and break up and continue up, but it's still nice at the moment. We haven't seen any shifts down. Price is still moving up. Correctively, you know, we're breaking the high, but we're, you know, not closing above the high. We're seeing wicks, but it's doing what it's doing. At this point, we're just sitting back and letting it do its thing. So here we move close to the top, and then we see a shift down. At this point, it's kind of a warning for me, because that's a shift down. What happens next? Because if we're near the top now, we haven't actually got into the high, we haven't broken above, and we've seen the shift down. So we need to see if that shift continues or what happens next. So it continues down, but the shift in momentum doesn't continue. We don't see further momentum to the downside. So not so worried about it at the moment, and then it breaks up. So that's a lovely 2% trade there. Again, I did not take this. I was away from the charts at this point in time, but that's how I see that, and that's how that played out, right? If this candle closed below, or there was a larger wick here, it wouldn't have been a viable trade, because again, like here, you know, we're looking for buys now because the wick down says the price tried to move down and wasn't able to. So vice versa, if price moves up and isn't able to, and retraces and closes around here and the wick's up here, then that's telling me that it's trying to move up but struggling to. So the likelihood of it moving all the way back up here is more unlikely. It's not impossible, and it might, you know, still happen, but because Forex is based on probabilities, you want the probabilities to be more in your favor rather than against. So that's how we see that. But yeah, sadly it wasn't in that trade, but it is what it is. It's, you know, there'll be more. There's always going to be more trades. So if we go back onto the hourly, so now we're in this area of liquidity. So the next trade I would be looking at is a potential another buy, because on the turtle soup ones I set profits. I don't let them run. I just set profits to the other end, and away we go. So if I'm looking for another buy here, it's because I want to see a continuation pattern. So we need to move above this area, do whatever it needs to do in this area, and then continue, and then see a pattern. So maybe like a flag up here and continue, or just a pullback, continue, pull back to the area and continue. Either way, we need to see how we react to this first and then what happens afterwards, accounting for the momentum part, wicks, and so on and so forth. But now we are approaching / in this area, we're basically approaching in the area of liquidity for this main range here. So we see a wick going into it. We push up with momentum. That's quite nice. So now we're in the area of liquidity and we're in it with momentum. We retrace, we continue, but fail to close, and we get a little wick here. Still in the area of liquidity, so we'll see how we react. And we try and get a shift down, but there is a small wick here, but that's, it's pushing down now, so we're just reacting into this area. We're ranging. So this is interesting because this is a flag right here, right? We've moved up, we pull back, and then we could be looking for continuation. It's a really nice setup, but the key part is it's in the very much wrong area. It's in the wrong area to be taking a trade here, because I see this as doing this in the area of liquidity. And because we haven't cleared this area, it still has potential to go down. For that reason alone, despite the fact we've got a nice build of momentum, we don't see a shift. This is a picture perfect flag setup for me, because we've moved up, we've broken the lows, but then, rejecting everything, going back up. Because we've got all the key factors there, it's really nice. But because it's in the wrong area, and that's something that is really key for you to understand, is when you're learning a strategy, do you know where these setups are supposed to happen? If you're looking for a continuation pattern, i.e. trading with the trend, have you got an established trend, or are you very early in and it's not yet established? There's no point me taking continuation if we're not continuing from anything other than the start of something. We need to make sure that we're actually in a trending market, rather than we could potentially be in a trending market but not sure yet. So area of liquidity here, not taking this trade, although it looks beautiful. So we'll just see how price plays out. This is also spread hours now, because as you see, there's a little gap there, and that moving into the Sydney session. So we're expecting a small price range or movement at this point anyway, because it's early hours and nothing really happens in this time. As you can see, price is still moving down a little bit. It's not moving down with momentum, but it's moving down a bit further. Bam. If that was sort of close, it'd be a nice move of momentum, but it undoes all this work, pushes up. We do get a wick here, but we see a nice start of momentum. Does this momentum continue? Again, we're still looking for a continuation, but we would need price to break above this. We could come back to this level, and I would be happy to take that to then continue up. Or if we get a new setup over here, say same kind of thing, not a big pullback but like that, but something like that, say. So, but yeah, we need to move above this area and away from all of this first. But a pullback to this area, if we break up nicely with momentum, is possible. So after that wick, we retrace and then we continue, but we get another wick. But we did break that high actually just about. So we are trying to break through these higher highs now above the area of liquidity. And bam, yeah, there. So we break above, do close above. Would I, in terms of actually taking this though, back to that area, it's viable, but there's just something about it that I'm not too sure on. I think it's just the general, because we had the initial break and it failed, but it continued. Yeah, it's a nice one, but I'll mark it on, but it's just not, I don't know, there's just something about it. Don't like it. I didn't take this either live, by the way. I didn't actually take any trade spoilers that week. Entry, so if we do 2 pips above, as per the thing. 12 pip stop loss. So at this point, we want price to come back, tap, and then continue. And this one is where I follow my stop loss with the trend rather than setting a profit target. I just, continue with the trend until the trend stops. But yeah, we've broken above this level. We pull back, we decide to continue, and we break above. We do have a slight wick here, but we do close above. So let's see what happens. Okay, it gets taken out. Oh, the news. Oh, it's after news. That's what I didn't see that. The news candle, but either way, it came straight back and tapped out, tapped down. The news candle. Oh. So typically when we have big news, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning, I wouldn't have been awake at that point anyway. Typically though, when there's periods of news, I won't take a trade soon before or soon after, like an hour or two before or after. If I'm in a trade a few hours before, then I'll take it out as close to as I can get if price is like moving in my direction. And I can't hold news events through with my funded account anyway. But either way, what am I saying? Yeah, and after, if you get a big move, sometimes there's volatility, right? Like if you get this big wick up, big body, it takes some time to settle. So I'll let it settle and just walk away for that point. But yes, it was a 4 in the morning and after a news event, so I knew there was something. I can't believe I just didn't look down, which is quite funny. So price is moving down. We're kind of going back into this range now. After that move momentum down, we get this wick, but we're not looking for anything at the moment because I'm asleep. And that I just moved it too far. Actually, yeah, that's my bad. So we're looking at the Asian range again at this point because it's, you know, the evening. So the range isn't really a range, right? It's all fine moving in a direction until we get this news event. So yeah, there are stops above here and potentially below here, but for this volatility, it's a bit naff. I mean, we'll draw it on and have a look and see what happens in this moving part, but we also have news. Well, it's another morning news, so that's all right. I'll pay attention to that one this time. But let's have a look on the 15 minutes and see what's going on. So yeah, we get a nice ascending here, look, and then retrace down, and this is all momentum. So this isn't an Asian range because there's no range, right? It's just momentum. So I mean, it's not something you can really take as a. I guess there is liquidity. You have some liquidity under here, but it's some, right? It's not so strong that it would cause a reaction potentially. But we'll see what we get, because if we're corrective around here, we move here and get an obvious shift up, or vice versa. You know, we correctively move up, break into this area, then an obvious shift down, then that's quite nice, right? If price action is telling me something like that, then it's worth looking at and worth taking, right? So right now we're moving quite correctively towards the high, but I've also got to be careful about the time as well. So still moving. What time are we at? 1 o'clock. So this is where I'm actually quite careful, because this is approaching the New York session as well. But we move very correctively up here. We break above. What happens next? We retrace back down, but we see a small wick down. Don't like that. Another wick. So yeah, not really looking for anything there at all. So if I go back to the hourly, and yeah, it's getting over the time that I look at. So we skip forward. At this point, again, we're breaking above highs again. But if you look at how price action is being, move up, retrace, move up, retrace. I know this was news, but it's still what price action is saying. We moved up again. We see wicks here. We retrace. We continue. This is a continuation pattern, but you know, after all these pullbacks and retraces, I'm not so sure on it. So price could still do the same. You know, it can move up, move back down, because this is breaking lows. So although it's gradually moving up, because we're breaking lows, there isn't such. It's a trend, but not a trend I like to take. It's not a trend of the momentum, like retrace, continue, continuing still, building some momentum here, which is quite nice. Getting into the later hours now, so I can't be looking for a trade anyway, because I'm either spread hours or I'm going to bed. Price is moving up. So this is quite a nice bit of momentum, right? But we have got news in an hour or so. Retrace, slight shift down, but there is a wick. That's the news candle, so we're moving down further still. And these candles, as you can see, they're not a shift because there's wicks here. However, they're undoing, like one candle undoes that work. This candle undoes 4 candles worth and a bit, right? So although it's not a shift in momentum, it's undoing the momentum that we had to the upside. So that's something to be careful for. So 2 o'clock, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And let's go down, let's mark out the highs of that. So that's Sydney. It'd be a bit silly for me to, although this is the Asian part, because of, you know, that high there, it's a bit silly to mark out the one below, in my opinion. So do that, that, go to the 15, where it is 7:45, so just about to have the London Open. So at this point, because of where price is and the direction that it's been going as well, right, that's something that we've got to pay attention to. I would much prefer price to break below, because of how correctly we've moved down, break below and then move up, rather than it move correctly up and then move back down, because it's, with this momentum up, although it's been negated, there is still something to say that, you know, price is generally favouring the upwards, it's got an upwards bias, right? So buys here are much more preferable than sells, just because it's got that another added bit of confirmation. So we're just seeing if we break down. So we get a shift in momentum here, right? Because this price has moved down. It's a solid close. It's undone 3 or 5 candles and solid close. But because it's in a range, it doesn't really account for anything. It's just a strong warning that momentum isn't up. It could be down. We need to see what happens next. Do we see another shift down with momentum, or what do we get? We continue down again, the slightest wick, so not really concerning. It's not a large candle, but it does break this low. So we are starting to enter into this area. Now we have got a range here. So, you know, there is that area of liquidity as well as the general. We have, yeah, area of liquidities from under here as well. But again, these aren't so strong in my opinion that it's, you know, for reaching all the way up here, if you know, these areas of liquidity aren't so strong that it could push price all the way back up there. But yeah, we have got this area that we're paying attention to. This candle's a tricky one. Because of that wick. Now, it's a very small wick, however, due to this shift down, it's a dodgy one, and we only tapped into this area. I'd have liked to see more of a takeout. It's a small range, so small area, but it's still, I'm not really a fan of this setup. If there was a larger wick in here, I really liked that. But at the moment, for what that shows, I just don't like it. Price isn't continuing up, it's pushing down, and again we wick in, we do close above, but it's just weak, right? We're tapping into this area ever so slightly by a few ticks. I need to see a push down, a full clear, and then continue. And price is struggling to continue up as it is anyway, but we're still kind of ranging, right? So we are still forming this like area of liquidity even further. Still tapping in, still rejecting from this area, but just because we reject doesn't mean we're going in the opposite direction. Like, it could just hover around here for the longest time and then drop down or then go up. That's why we can't just take trades willy-nilly. Like, this is kind of nice because, you know, shift down, fails to continue, slight shift back up. But for the size of this shift, it's just not enough. If this setup was bigger and if this wick was more into this, then I'd like it. And again, this might be something that over time I see happen over and over, and every time, or more often than not, it plays to the upside, or not, right? But at the moment, I just don't like the way it's set up. See, after this little bit of momentum, price moves up and then moves back down. So not filling us with hope here. What time is it anyway? 12:15. So we're getting into the afternoon parts anyway. And a shift down, a shift into this area. So if we get a retrace and a shift up, but the shift up has to undo like this and then close like above it, close above this candle. That's the only way I'd like to take this right now. But we are in this area, we have shifted down. But what happens after the shift? That's a question to ask yourself. Honestly, every time something happens, everything key happens, a shift in momentum, range, what happens after? If you see something, you see a wick, you see a tap into an area, what happens after? Because that's how you train yourself into seeing, you know, you train yourself into looking for the evidence that you need to see rather than the evidence that you want to see. So we get a nice wick down and a push up, but it's not a shift, right? So this is, you know, thing hasn't closed above this line. If we get another candle that again shifts up from here, I would like that. I'll take that. Oh, hello. Oh, see, we almost got it. If there was no wick here, again, right, price pushing up, failing to continue and retracing back down, but it's not doing that. It's pushed up, failed, and moved back down rather than closing here. If this closed here, yeah, I'll take that because it's undone all of this range. You know, it's pushed back up, and we've got yeah, I'd like that. It's got a chance of moving up there. Plus, this is kind of like a descending channel, right? But because we have this wick here, it's telling me that it's tried to move up and failed, so not taking that. And lo and behold, price moves down further still. So at this point, I'm not looking for anything, because it is the afternoon now, and we're not rejecting from this area of liquidity. We are still playing around in it or moving through it. So there's that. We are on a Wednesday, the 25th. So back to the hourly. In a descending kind of channel here. Oof. As I pushed down in half, there was obviously potentially some unexpected news that happened there. But let's see. So again, asking yourself the question, we had momentum move down here. What happens after momentum? Does price continue down? Because now we could look for a sell where we push down, we retrace, we continue, we pull back to the area and then move down, or we move down, we pull back and get a nice flag and then go down like that, and then take the sell here and stop loss here and so on and so forth. But that's what we're looking at right now. But we can only take that if we see evidence that this momentum wants to continue. If we get a setup now, as long as it's picture perfect, we can take it. And I mean like a really small pullback, continue, really small flag, continue. If we get a larger pullback, because we only had this one leg of momentum, that's kind of negating that, right? So we need to see evidence. So we've continued. It's not the same size, but you know, it's still pushing down. We haven't got any wicks or anything or any warning signs. It's just pushing down. Here we have a wick and a pullback, but it's a wick, so we need to see what happens after the wick. What happens after the event? So after momentum, we get a small wick. What happens after the wick? Do we get a shift in momentum? Does it just range out? What happens after? Do we see evidence of it wanting to continue? Do we see evidence that it wants to range? Do we see evidence that it wants to reverse? So we continue just, right, the wick is here, we close kind of just below or not, we close on the line thereabouts. So that's saying that it might continue, but it might not, but we don't have enough momentum to be pushing down. So at this point, I'm not looking for a sell because it's not filling me with confidence, and see we're just ranging. And then we get a shift up. There is a wick at the end of this, but you know, it negates all of this. It undoes all of this. So yeah, shift up here. So we're not looking for anything at the moment. I could say, why don't you buy that? Because, you know, it's a shift up. Again, what happens after the shift? Do we have evidence that price now wants to move up? Or has it just said, I don't want to move down anymore? It's the latter. It says it doesn't want to move down anymore. So it moved up again, but there's another wick. So just play this out and see what happens. What time is it? 5 in the morning. Good shift up there. So at this point, we're in the Asian time anyway. That's a lovely shift up. So 5, 6, 7. Again, Asian range, there isn't one. It's just moved up in this entire time. So there's not a range for the liquidity to move up and move down. But at this point, we are moving up. So we're going to see if we can take a buy at any point. But we've had 3 wicks in a row, 3 price moving above, but failing to close above and then moving back down and then closing below the high anyway. 4. But then we get a nice push up here. So here I can be looking for buys, but again, we need the setup, the ones that I've been drawing continuously. Where we move up, we retrace, continue, pull back to the area, and then continue up. Or again, a flag where we are moving up, we pull back, create a flag, and then continue taking the buy around here. But let's see what we get. And in those pullbacks, we don't want to see a shift, and we don't want the pullback to be really deep, because on this pair, it's likely it can just, you know, go break the low and then continue, but they're unlikely to play out. As it did here, it didn't, you know, continue for very long before it pulled back down, broke the low, and then continued up again. So after this shift in momentum doesn't continue. I'm expecting a pullback after this, but we see a wick down. It continues, but doesn't close above. It fails to close, and we see a wick. Oh, okay. So my mic is dying, so I'll try and be quick for this last little part. We're on a Thursday anyway, so we're looking for any continuations. There was a news events here as well, so a lot of, again, volatility, so no trading until we know the price has come down, and it doesn't look to be at the moment yet. So spread hours going into the Asian session, last little stretch, and we have news the next day as well, so we can look for a turtle soup, but we've got to be aware of what could be happening next. So at this point, 7 o'clock, let's draw on our lows. So that's the low for the Asian there, and that's the high for the Sydney, but you know, we're not going to draw it halfway down because that would be silly. So let's see what we get. Again, upward bias here, so an upward buy would be preferred, but if we get a sell, that wouldn't be too bad, but we'll just see what happens and what we get, if we get anything at all. So price is moving, ranging in this area where, oh, no, we don't, and the news hits, so we kind of don't get anything there anyway, but news hits there. Going to the hourly. We need to see if this momentum continues off this news event, which it kind of does. If this closed solid, this would be a nice trade because, you know, we've moved up, pulled back, continued, but we don't get that. Instead, we get a nice shift down, coming towards the end of the trading day now anyway, so I'm not at this point. It's 5 o'clock, so I'm not looking for anything. But yeah, that's it. Nothing on that week, but that's how price was moving on that week. That's how I saw it. I hope you found that useful. Any questions, let me know. Any comments, please let me know in the comment section. Like, subscribe, notification, all that. And I shall see you all in the